Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to Manufacturing Talks. I'm Jim Vinosky, your host. We're sponsored by Cosgrove Content, your wordsmiths for industry. If you work in a technically demanding field and you struggle to find people who can write about what you do, whether that's blog posts or position papers or even a book about your company, look us up, cosgrovecontent.com. And I'm really happy to be joined today by Aaron Marks. He's the founder and president of Aspire Marketing Group. Welcome, Aaron.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. I think, we were talking a little bit before we got on here about lots to cover here, marketing and manufacturing. So give us your upfront thoughts on that, and then we'll talk a little bit about you and where you came from.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Manufacturing is one of those industries that tends to be kind of the laggards in when it comes to trends and things like that. And that's worked for a long time. But I think a lot of the macro trends that have impacted and disrupted virtually every other industry are now coming to manufacturing. And I think a lot of manufacturers are looking at it and saying, either one, what can I do to get an advantage over my competitors as these things are happening? Or two, a lot more common, wow, things have changed a lot. It's suddenly impacting my business. What the heck can I do? Do I need to hit the panic switch?
Yeah, great points. We'll dive into all that more deeply here, but so tell us about yourself. Where are you from, and what'd you get? Or I'm sorry, what got you into the whole marketing business?
Yeah, well, I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which kind of is a place that historically is known for manufacturing, and today is really cool. It's gone from that. It's no longer that smoggy place that people think of, and it's amazing when people visit, they still think that. Manufacturing is super prominent here still, right? But it's totally different. It's green, it's clean tech. It's this is the place where Uber, when they were doing self-driving, and then Argo AI and other companies have put their headquarters for that. Right. So it's very cool. Healthcare is also really big here as well. Just really amazing stuff. Prior to the pandemic, my background, I spent 10-ish years in various in-house marketing leadership roles. And a lot of them were in the manufacturing space. It was really fortunate to lead, all things digital and a lot of our go-to-market, a lot of our commercialization on the marketing side at the company called Aquian Energy here in Pittsburgh. It was a clean tech manufacturer. We were commercializing a new battery technology, and there were some kind of big names that were involved in investing in it, like Bill Gates and Kleiner Perkins. But just such a fascinating experience. I joined before we were commercial at all. There was a ton of hype, of course, right? I mean, Bill Gates invested in the company. Oh, yeah. But when the time I left was when we were well into the commercialization efforts, and that was super cool. I also have spent time, so that's your like startup manufacturing side of things. I also spent some time recently, kind of my last role right before the pandemic, leading marketing for the Americas at a company called Nordlock Group. They are kind of the premium manufacturer of high-end bolting products and things like that. And that's often where I've landed a lot in my career is, companies that sell higher quality, highly differentiated products. And there's a lot of challenges that come with that, right? The challenges are buying cycles are longer. They cost more. So there's a lot of decision makers that need to be involved, right? Of course, we're talking business to business products here. So it's not like some engineer wakes up one day and says, hey, I'm going to buy your widget. There's an engineer there. He goes through a giant purchasing process and research process. There's purchasing, there's leadership. You've got to be cognizant of a bill of materials. There's so many layers to it, but I find that really fun. Yeah. The industry overall, I think, tends to be a bit behind, but as a mentor once always said, and I think is a great way to think about it, it means that we're fraught with opportunity. Right. Fast forward to the pandemic, I found myself unemployed, as many people did, unfortunately. Yeah. There was a major impact, and the manufacturing industry felt that hard, and it got every piece of that industry was of course affected. I mean, that's when you think of a month
Right.
plus of shutdowns, of course, that makes a lot of sense. So I sat back. I had always wanted to start a business where I could bring the type of leadership that I was bringing to companies that had, hundreds of millions of dollars or more in
Mhm.
annual revenue and bring it to small and mid-sized businesses. And
Yeah,
so
nice.
that's been my focus. That's been my mission since I started Aspire.
Yeah, so that's where it came from. How long you been at it now?
Over 2 years.
Okay, so ready to start. Cool. And how's it going?
It's going great. I wake up every day and and feel really fortunate. Of course, hard work and everything goes into this, but just so fortunate that I have the flexibility to run a business the way I believe,
Yeah.
and work with some amazing, small to mid-sized companies uh, that are seeing results from their marketing, that are doing great things, that are excited about their marketing. Um, that really drives me, because these are companies that would never have been able to afford to hire someone like me full time,
Right.
but with our approach we can come and we can provide what I call a fractional marketing department experience, help them really do some awesome things, and put them in a great position to succeed, and that's very fulfilling.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's dive into what those opportunities are. So you've been at it a couple of years. What are you seeing around, manufacturers in particular with respect to marketing? Maybe, what are some of the challenges? What are some of the misconceptions that you might see as you go into an outfit and try to help them out with their messaging?
I think there's a bunch, but when you talk about misconceptions, I think one of the biggest ones that I see is this concept. There's a fire, right? The fire is things are changing. Our buyers aren't buying the way they used to. What do we do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we need to do marketing, right? Is the reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, we need to do marketing. And the problem is, it's that misconception. If you build it, they will come.
Right.
It's not that
Yep.
simple. Marketing, saying, hey, we're gonna go. I've had this conversation. We're looking for someone to do LinkedIn. Well, what's driving LinkedIn? Well, all our competitors are on LinkedIn, and we know it's important. Successful marketing, in my mind, means it comes from a clear understanding of your customers. What do they need? What are their challenges? What are their watering holes, so to speak, right? Is it actually LinkedIn? And it often is in B2B complex sales, but it's not always. There are industries where there are really tight niches of people on Facebook, and there are industries still where people aren't digital. So
Right.
that clear customer understanding is a piece of it, and using that clear understanding plus what you're trying to do at your business objectives, to actually create a plan and be thoughtful about it. And I think that's that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions that I'm seeing.
Yeah. You mentioned some of those differences. How much differentiation is there across, if you just look at manufacturing in particular? Obviously, it covers a lot of ground.
Yeah.
How much differentiation do you see kind of segment to segment as far as the different needs from a marketing perspective?
It's a great question. Like I said, I started my journey on the clean tech, super high tech, super high VC investment, right? It's a very different buyer than being at a bolting company or a company that sells, that sells composites and things like that. But in my mind, the disruption started happening a long time ago in all the industries. Those higher tech industries saw it sooner, and I think some of them have reacted more, based on that. I think the more traditional manufacturing industries are seeing it a lot more today. And what I mean by that is that there's a couple of phenomena going on. There's a report put out by Forrester. It was over a decade ago now. It was called "The Death of a B2B Salesman." Basically, the summary of it is young people are coming into the workforce, and in fact, the statistic now is the majority of the workforce is either millennial or Gen Z now today. So young people are coming to their workforce. These are people, who grew up on Amazon. They grew up, their consumer lives totally different, right? They have totally different expectations. It's not, hey, if you take me out some nice dinners I see at the trade shows, we go play golf sometimes. I'm going to buy from you. It's not,
Right.
the relationship is not totally irrelevant. I'm not dismissing it, but an example I always cite is I spent some time, in industrial distribution at Wesco Distribution. And while I was there, we had a huge global account. It's an $8 billion company, right? But a huge global account, hundreds of millions of dollars a year, had been super stable. One day, the guy that we'd worked with retired, and a millennial came in, and it went from, "Hey, I'm going to buy from you." Duh, of course. It became, "What are your digital capabilities? How do you enable me to buy on my own without having to pick up the phone and talk to sales?" And if you can't answer those questions, I'm going to a competitor.
Yeah.
That same story is playing out over and over and over, and that's starting to come to the manufacturing side, right? That the concept of death of a B2B salesman is people want to self-serve.
Yeah.
People want to do research themselves. They want something like 80% of buying B2B buying decisions start with a Google search. If you're not found on Google, if you're not giving people the content they need at every single step of their research, they're going to turn to someone else and they're going to buy it from someone else. And that paradigm has really started, I think, to affect that long tail of the industries that managed to dodge it for a long time, because, like I said, the majority of the workforce is millennial or Gen Z.
Right.
It is turning over. The way everybody wants to buy is different. And it's a little scary, but it's also a big advantage in my mind if you can adapt.
Yeah, and get ahead of it. Yeah.
Yep.
What would you say the biggest mistake you're seeing is out there?
The one thing I see a lot with business leaders who don't have a marketing background is the shiny thing syndrome, right? Like I said, I see my competitors doing LinkedIn. I see, I have this one-off story of some guy who found us on blank place, and now let's focus on that. Especially when things get turbulent, especially when things are bumpy, there's a kind of natural reaction to want to just press the panic button and do something. The problem is, in my experience, the vast majority of the time, 95% plus, marketing without a plan, one-off marketing, reactive marketing isn't successful. It's also scary when I say that, because businesses react and they say, well, we have to do something. We don't have the time to sit back and plan. And I'm not saying that, you need to bring in a consultant and spend 6 months developing the world's best marketing plan. But those 4 to 6 weeks of really truly taking the time to understand your business objectives, who are the actual buyers, we call them buyer personas, or you might also see here like ICP, ideal customer profile, the actual buyers in the company that you need to sell to. Who are they? What does that look like? What are their needs? What are their challenges? How do you solve them? Where do they go to do their research? And then using that to fill in a marketing plan for how you actually attack things. You won't be successful if you don't do that.
Yeah. If you go back, you mentioned a little bit about how much things have changed, and you think about how manufacturing, sales, and marketing used to work. It was very much about personal relationships. It was phone calls or in-person meetings, getting on the road and doing sales calls or going to trade shows or going to industry groups. Is it still that personal relationship in a different way, or is it just totally digital and it's not about personal anymore?
Well, I think it's very much about personal. People don't want, more than anything. I mean, this is what millennials, Gen Zers have grown up on, is hyper personalized experiences. This is the creepy example of Target, where there's a story that's going on where Target started sending coupons for maternity products to you probably heard the story. I think it was to a younger woman, and she's like, she's like, I'm not pregnant. What? And they actually, based on her buying habits, proactively identified it before. It's things like that, right? It's hyper personalization. You go on Amazon, and half the time they've already predicted what you're on there to buy. Obviously, it's a different experience in B2B, but but people want to have a personalized experience. We in marketing, we call it a journey that people go through from when they wake up and they realize, oh my God, I have a problem, right? This, when I think of the bolting industry, right? This bolted joint is failing and I can't figure out why. And it's costing me a lot of money. But they don't immediately then go purchase solutions. There's a lot of research that comes in between.
Mm-hmm.
And that research is the journey. Marketers like to pretend like that's a very linear journey and everybody follows it, but in reality the journey is like this, right? People are going backwards and forwards and up and down, and you need to be able to put together an experience that supports that. And sales is a piece of this as well. Like you said, the relationship is a piece of this as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's no longer, it used to be basically you do business on our terms. We have the relationship, we're going to treat you really well. Now it's all about their terms. Some buyers want completely self-service e-commerce. And this is one of the big things we worked on when I was at Nordlock was we realized our buyers didn't always want to, yes, fax. We did get a lot of faxes, and I know that's still prominent in this industry, or call. Sometimes they just wanted to be able to put their specs in and order online.
Yeah.
And then you have buyers that still want that more personal touch. So you need to be able to enable it all, which sounds a little scary. But if you really dig in and understand the customers, it's not that big of a lift, but it's critical. If you can't do that, a competitor will come in and do it. And your buyers that have been buying for you for 50 years will take their business to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You kind of alluded to something that got me thinking. It's still personal, but in a different way, right? Mm-hmm. People used to rely more on the experts in a manufacturing company to provide them all the information and kind of guide people to what they needed. Now that's all online. You can go spec out whatever. And it's really more about those connections in the transaction itself and who you're connecting with to get the job done, right?
Completely agreed with that. Yes.
So that being said, how much of it is just about basics, like having that website that has the functionality people understand today and are looking for?
It's one of the questions that I do hear sometimes, which is, I'm realizing I need to do all this stuff. How do I do it all? And the answer isn't that you do it all, right? Again, a lot of what you do is guided by that customer understanding of your customers. But to answer your question directly, I've been involved in a lot of what I'd call marketing builds, both, with the range of clients that we work with now, and then in my in-house experience. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy the idea of building rather than coming in and taking over, an organization that's really mature. That's one of the reasons that this industry has always been really appealing to me, because there's always that opportunity to build. When you think about a build of doing marketing, I think of it as crawling, walking, running. Those stages don't look the same for every business at all, but you're right. A good website that has some good content that is modern and easy to access and works on your mobile device. Mm-hmm. Those are basics, and you start with the basics. You can't bite it all off at once. So you've got to think about, when you build your marketing plan, the first base is, over the next 12 to 18 months, what does it look like to crawl? And crawling means starting to see some results, but the foundational stuff, right? What does that all look like? And then what does it look like when we build on that? That's how I think about it. But yeah, you're exactly right. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah. And then it's obviously a big leap for people who aren't comfortable in the new digital world, just around KPIs and measures that they need to be paying attention to. How much do you see out there as far as people needing to learn all that and set those targets for themselves and really pay attention to something different to see if their marketing efforts are paying off?
Yeah, I absolutely think when you start making that pivot into digital, especially, it does change things. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, marketing is measured by what is the bottom line pipeline is driving, what is the revenue is driving. But
yeah,
marketing is also the type of thing that takes time to get results. And basically the way you need to think about it is you think of your sales process in the funnel, right? And I'm mapping it out left to right, but it's your funnel traditionally is actually top to bottom, and it's there's kind of three chunks of the funnel typically when you think about it. There's awareness. People wake up and they have a problem and they begin researching how have others dealt with that problem. Consideration. They're starting to consider the solutions that could potentially solve the problem. Decision. They've narrowed in on a handful of solutions and they're trying to decide which one's right for them. Each of those stages has different measurements, right? So at the decision stage, that's where you're looking at, how many marketing or sales qualified leads, which might be new terminology to some people. How many are we generating? Yep. How much pipeline is that turning into? How much revenue is that turning into? But before you can really get there, you need to have a healthy top and middle of funnel, and you measure those by more things like how much traffic are we getting to our website? What percentage of that traffic is turning into leads in our database? This is, when I'm talking to new prospects in the manufacturing space, is the number one thing that I kind of dig into. So the vast majority of people have a website that basically generates no leads. And the reason for that is has been really extensively researched by LinkedIn's B2B Institute. At any given time, only 5% of your buyers are in market. 95% are not. And you can't just flip a switch and make them ready to buy. Truthfully, people decide when they're ready to buy. Yeah. So it's great when you have a website and you're able to get the people who are ready to buy, but that's still what most manufacturing websites serve, is only to that 5%. And so you'll often hear like 0.5%, 0.3% of people who visit my website end up entering my database as a lead. A really healthy performing channel and a great place to start is, how do we get that to 1 or 2%? How do we increase that? Because if I can, or you can increase your traffic by a little bit, but then quadruple or triple the percentage of people who are turning into leads, your pipeline's going to grow way bigger. And that's where you have to start, in my mind, is it's thinking about what are those metrics at the top to the middle of funnel that you're going to measure against, and how are those going to ultimately drive success. Once you start filling that top of the funnel, then it becomes a lot easier to drive the bottom of the funnel.
Yeah. So you've got that digital presence, and you've got the things that people are looking for and able to, in order for them to engage and do the purchasing function that they're looking for. And that's what you're saying. It's necessary, but not sufficient. So you got to drive people to that as well. Are there consistent methods that you've seen that are effective across all of industry that people ought to be looking at?
Yeah, so one of my favorite things is is what I call a content mapping exercise, which is basically, really simply put, stepping back once you understand that buyer and saying, we talked about awareness, consideration, decision. Each of those stages, what resources, what content do they need to buy? Because ultimately, if you can provide them with what they need at every step of the way, they're probably going to buy from you for two reasons. One, you've earned their trust. Mm-hmm. And two, it's been extensively researched. B2B is not that different from B2C. If you're the brand that comes to mind when they go and they need to make a purchase, you're probably the one they're going to buy from.
Yeah, people like the easy button, right?
They do. Yeah. They do. And they trust what they know. So that exercise of understanding where the gap, what you need to have and where the gaps are, is really where to start. And my experience, the vast majority of manufacturing companies are really good at the bottom of the funnel. They're really good at providing data sheets. They're really good at talking about the products and why they're great. They're really good
all the geeky stuff.
All the geeky stuff.
It's where we live.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly right. The geeky stuff is really important. But it's only important if I'm getting close to that buying decision.
Yeah.
They said, if I wake up and I'm like, my machine is failing and I don't know what to do about it, if I hand you, a catalog, you're going to be like, what the hell? This is useless for me. But if I go to Google, which I know, some people in the industry are like, no way, but that's what's happening. I go to Google, I start a search because I do that in my personal life, and I say, excavator machine parts failing, whatever it is.
Yep.
I want to find a blog post that talks about, here are a handful of solutions, right? It can't be an ad, it can't be a promotion. Here are a handful of things you might not have thought about, right? Five solutions to the failure that you may not have thought about. Why this thing fails. By providing that content at the top of the funnel in this awareness phase, when people are just trying to understand the basics, trying to wrap their head around potential solutions, you start to earn the trust.
Yeah.
So that to me is the exercise, right? You lay out, what do we think is everything people need to do this, and then what are the gaps that we
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. You touched on blog posts. It's funny. It's like this universal thing I see. I'll get on company websites and they'll have that blog section, and then the last post is 2 years ago.
Yep.
I mean, how important is that you have fresh, updated material going in there?
So there are a handful of things with this, right? I mean, one is the buyer trust. If I come to your website and I'm like, this website hasn't been updated in a few years, that can create friction as far as the trust from your buyers.
Yeah.
The second thing, though, is besides being educational, blogs are critical from an SEO perspective, and SEO, search engine optimization, is what that stands for.
Right.
It's fancy marketing speak for saying, how do I make sure that when people search for things relevant to me, I'm in that first page in those top 10 results on Google, which is a really complex art and science in the marketing space, but is really important. And blogs are one of the single most important things you can do to support that. And it's very much a snowball effect, right? Having a handful of blog posts has almost no effect. The more of them you have, the bigger the snowball gets, the more impact it has. And that's really been studied a lot. I do think it's really important. And I think it's important to keep that fresh because, things may not change that much, but things do change. Buyer needs change, and having that content to represent that is important for all those reasons.
Yeah. So one thing I've been talking about a lot recently is we're just in manufacturing a unique time where, for the longest time, we've been kind of the underdogs, really like a 50-year drought of stuff going overseas and, not being able to compete. And now all of a sudden, like you mentioned, the pandemic changed a lot of things, and it changed a lot of thinking about, geez, maybe having that supply chain that stretches halfway across the world doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yep.
It's a unique opportunity and lots of crazy stuff going on with, availability of things and prices of things and all of that. Are there particular things that manufacturers need to be doing for marketing to take advantage of this insanity?
It's a good question. I think there's some fundamentals, right? When you think of that bottom of the funnel step, it is really important to talk about availability and supply chain and all of those things. But I think, I honestly think the biggest thing the pandemic did is, besides disrupting supply chains and the entire industry, it accelerated these trends of the way people want to buy.
Yeah.
We all got used to working in our office. We all got used to virtual meetings and things like that. And it didn't impact the lines at manufacturing facilities, of course, and it didn't impact the front line. And there were definitely some impacts, but outside of that, a lot of these decision makers, people who are involved in the finance side of the decision, people who are involved in the the bill of materials, the engineers, all those people, they often are working remotely. And I think it means you need to be in more places now. Trade shows are important. In fact, I'm hearing a lot of enthusiasm about trade shows again because I think people are just happy to get back and see human beings again, which is it's pretty glorious. It really is amazing, the power of the human connection. But there are a lot of companies that are saying, no, we now know that you don't need to go to those trade shows, and we're going to keep you home. You reach them. So I think I do think being able to speak to, hey, tell a story about here's how we handled this and this is how we're prepared to serve you is important at the bottom of the funnel. But for the rest of the funnel, I think it's just accelerated that need to adapt.
Yeah, that's a superb point too, and something I would add to that. So many of us on the front lines of manufacturing, our day-to-day during the pandemic didn't change that much. We still went into the plant and did our thing. And so it's pretty vital that we, pull our heads up out of our little world and realize, a lot of things changed outside that bubble from a business perspective, and be cognizant of that and react to that. Yeah. Excellent point. Let me shift gears again. I always like to have a good laugh here. So is there something that's particularly humorous that you come across as far as manufacturers and their challenges with marketing? Throwing you a curveball.
You are. I, I think a lot of times the thing that gets me, privately cracking up, because I have a lot of these conversations where it is, you know, oh my God, we need to do something. Do you just do work on LinkedIn? Or oh my God, that I mean, obviously the way I react in the conversation is a little bit different, but it always gets me going a little bit, especially when you hear the weird ones. Hey, we're gonna build an Instagram, and I'm like, or I heard TikTok's the big thing, and don't get me wrong, I keep an eye on those things because those might become things down the line.
Yep.
But sometimes that just the knee-jerk reaction, I think it's important as a leader to take a step back and think for a minute. That's not to say I don't want to write it off, because things are changing so fast. There may be a day where, and there may even be some brands where Instagram makes sense, right? If you've got a product that's really about the way it looks, or the applications look really impressive and visual, maybe you're installing in, I don't know, the generation industry, and you want to show these giant, different types of power generation machines and things like, maybe, but yeah, that's probably the one thing that cracks me up, is just that knee-jerk reaction. You're like, suddenly you're having this conversation about, we're going to create a YouTube channel, I'm going to become a YouTube celebrity, and you're like, you know what that involves.
It is funny though, and I'm going to offer some perspective from my end. Those of us in manufacturing, we want to be the solution providers. We want to have the answers, and so I think it's probably something of a knee jerk just in our makeup, where we're not going to call you and say, "Holy cow, I have no idea what I'm doing. Can you help me?" We're going to call and try to say, "We've got a handle on this, and we just need you to help us get there." But that is funny. TikTok channel. I can see that totally.
Yeah.
That's good. So Aspire's off to the races, 2 years old. Tell us how your business is grappling with all this, and where you see the opportunities, and where you're going to take it over the next couple of years.
So I think there's two pieces to this, right? I think one of the ways we pride ourselves in how we attack things differently is, most agencies come in and they have their model, right? And you're that stereotypical square hole, and it doesn't matter if their peg is round or square, they are going to take it and they're going to try to pound that into your business. We fundamentally embrace a different model, which is, we create a custom marketing plan, just like I would have done if you had hired me full time when I was doing that, a fully custom marketing plan, and we implement that. I'm a big believer that's what makes us different, and that's what drives the results. And I will share with you a link so that your audience can download a copy of the playbook I put together on this. So you're not ready to engage with an agency, or it doesn't make sense, you can download this. It's the exact same framework that I have created and that we use with every one of our clients for building a marketing strategy that's successful as a manufacturer. So I think that's one piece of it, is just continuing to really lean into that. The other thing I think is, for a long time, there was what we called outbound marketing, right? Outbound marketing is your trade shows, your events, your billboards, print ads, all the stuff. Outbound is putting yourself in front of people and trying to attract their interest, right? Kind of, historically called push. You push yourself out, push marketing, you push yourself out, and you try and earn people's attention from that. Then, 10, 15 years ago, HubSpot, this back then little startup, really pushed and innovated with this model that's called inbound marketing, right? Which is pull marketing, earning people's interest through content, earning people when they turn on Google, when they go onto Google and begin a search, earning their interest in their trust throughout their journey, which is what we talked a lot about today. But there's a third kind of marketing strategy that I see. it's newer, or at least the way it's defined is newer, and it's account-based marketing. And I actually think that having elements of all three is really critical. And this is something that we really pivoted toward, because I have an inbound marketing background. So when we started, we were very much focused on inbound. We do often support clients across their whole journey, so we were doing their ads and things like that as well. But over the last 6 months, we've really leaned hard into to account-based marketing. If you think of what that means, inbound marketing is like putting a wide net out, right? You can be targeted with it, but ultimately you're going to catch a whole bunch of fish. You're going to catch really valuable fish. You're going to catch a ton of not so valuable fish.
Yeah.
You're going to even catch, like, we'll call them sick fish or dead fish, which is what I mean by that is you're going to catch people who want jobs and people who want to sell you things, right?
Yeah.
That is really important. But account-based marketing, ABM, is spearfishing. You're identifying a handful of really high value target accounts that you either want to grow with, that you already have a relationship with, or you don't have a relationship and you want to get into. And you focus your energy with doing really targeted, personalized efforts toward those accounts. So with inbound, you're talking personalization based on a persona, right? I'm an engineer, and we're going to create content that speaks to the engineers who need to buy our product. With account-based marketing, you're saying, hey, we want to pursue, a specific type of customer, an ideal customer. So, that might be, like we talked about, that might be in the electrical generation industry. That might be, another downstream manufacturer. That might be, so a variety of those. We're going to target a very specific one. We want to target very specific accounts that meet very specific criteria, and we're going to get hyper personalized. Maybe we're going to send them some gifts in the mail to specific people that we think would buy from us, and try to get a conversation started that way. Maybe we're going to host an event, and that event isn't going to be promotional. It's only going to be invite only to these people, and we're going to talk about specific industry trends. I'm seeing that a lot, and we're really putting a lot more energy into account-based marketing. Your inbound, your outbound is still critical, but I actually think ABM is often the fastest path to ROI, is often the fastest path to revenue. And so that is really something that we're putting a lot of energy into.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The other thing that occurred to me while you're talking is there can be new opportunities out there that if you don't do that homework and look for what new industries are popping up, what new outlets might need your goods and services, then you can be missing the boat there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Is there anything we haven't touched on that folks ought to know about manufacturing and marketing and how the two go together?
I don't think so. I think we've had a pretty in-depth conversation. A really great one. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Aaron Marks with Aspire Marketing Group. Good luck to you. 2 years in, sounds like you're doing well, and hope you can continue to knock it out of the park.
I appreciate it, Jim. It's been a pleasure.
Same here. Thanks for everyone who tuned in. Yeah, look for us on our next episode coming up.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinoski. Watch for new episodes dropping on the first and third Tuesdays of every month.